Oops, I'll be right back. Okay, we're live on YouTube and I'm getting ready to start recording. Oh, Tiffany. No, Diane. Where did Diane go?
She had to step away for a minute. She said she'd be right back.
Okay, we got a new member tonight. Miss Laura, it's nice to see your face. You are muted. I don't know why. Oh, Miss Rita, it's so nice to see you, but you're driving, so you probably need to be off the camera. But it's nice to have everybody on camera. Hi, Mr. Rivers. Welcome. Diane, I forgot to add, we have a new member, Prince R. Rivers. And of course, I did not update the agenda.
No worries. I saw him today and I mentioned that we'd give him a minute to introduce himself.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Then Miss Renee, it was so nice to see you on camera before. You have 1 minute before the meeting start.
Okay.
I'm going to encourage we be on camera.
Yeah.
Miss Nicole Diggs, Miss Venus, Mr. John, thank you all so much. I want you all to get in practice on we be in person. You will know what the other person looked like.
Well, don't judge me if you see me chopping over here. I haven't eaten.
Oh, that's all right. It's your residents that's looking at you, not me. And where is Mr. Johnson? Give me 1 second, guys. Okay, never mind, you just joined. All right, Mr. Johnson is on. Good afternoon, Kyle. Mr. Snell, did I speak to you? My new friend.
Partners in crime, huh?
Yes, yes. Hey, Karen. It is now 6 o'clock.
Okay. We actually have a quorum, so I will go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. And thank you for joining us this evening for the Affordable Housing Implementation Committee meeting. It is Thursday, November 3rd at 6 p.m. And I wanted to take a moment before roll call to introduce our newest member, Pastor Prince Rivers, and give him a minute to say hello in a few words, if you'd like.
Sure. Thank you, Diane. And it's a pleasure to see everybody. A couple of you I did meet earlier today on the tour of affordable housing. As Diane mentioned, my name is Prince Rivers. I'm the pastor at Union Baptist Church here in Durham. It's located up North Roxborough Street. I've been back in the area. This is my second time living in Durham. I've been back in the area since 2017. And prior to that, I lived in Winston-Salem for about 12 years. I only mention that because the church I served there, we acquired about 112 units of housing that looked like some of the before pictures that we saw today, Anthony. And actually, just this summer, I got to go back for the groundbreaking on 300 units of workforce housing in a mixed-use development that the church partnered with many entities. So it was great to see that project finally come to pass, and really excited about what I see in the city of Durham, and just glad to be here tonight.
We're so glad you've joined the committee. Thank you. At this point, I'll turn it over to Juliet for roll call.
Okay, roll call. Laura Beatty. I know she's here.
She's waving. Yeah.
Okay. Kyle Bosterman.
Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
Okay. Diane Katati.
Here.
Lucia Constantine.
Here.
Okay. S. Nicole Diggs.
Here.
Tiffany Elder.
Here.
Courtney James asked for an excused absence. I. Jarvis Martin asked for an excused absence. Rita R. McDaniel.
Here.
Thank you. John Parker.
Here, not driving.
Thank you. Prince R. Rivers.
Here.
Thank you. Venus Sanders.
Here.
Okay. Timothy Stallman asked for an excused absence. And Angela Vick Lewis.
Here.
Thank you all so much. Roll call is complete.
Great. Thank you so much. At this point, I'll just review the agenda. We will, after this, approve the minutes from the September 1 meeting. We'll have an update from the Housing Authority. We'll have an update from Reginald Johnson in the Community Development Department. We'll hear from Moss and Ross on a communications update. We'll hear from CNC staff with an MWBE presentation. Looking forward to that. Get to some public comments, and then we have some things to deal with in wrap up that won't take too long. So that's it. Any adjustments to the agenda?
Madam Co-Chair, the ground rules.
Right, I was going to do that next. Thanks. We have slightly updated the ground rules, and I'll just read them really quickly. So first, we are encouraging committee members to keep their cameras on and microphones muted during the duration of the meeting. Please show respect for others and their opinions. Please presume goodwill. Please be fully present. We do ask committee members to raise their hands to speak, and I will try to acknowledge your hand, and we want to track that for the purposes of the minutes. Please be brief in your questions or comments, and any comments in the chat, we will try to review and address as feasible between meetings if we don't get to them during the meeting. And lastly, we ask that you use specific examples and enjoy the process. So thank you. At this point, I'll turn it over to Co-Chair Tiffany Elder for the minutes.
Thanks, Diane. Are there any requests for changes to the minutes from September 1st? Looking for any hands raised. I don't see any. Do we have a motion to approve the September 1st meeting minutes?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from September 1st.
And a second?
I second.
All in favor of approving as presented the meeting minutes from the September 1st meeting, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, the meeting shall pass, the meeting minutes shall pass as presented. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, Tiffany. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Housing Authority staff for their presentation.
So I'm going to let Mr. Snell do our presentation tonight, but I just wanted to thank everyone who was able to attend the tour today. I really appreciate you guys being able to come, have a first look, if you will, at a lot of the work that we've been talking about for now 3+ years, but to see us actually finally get to some momentum. And of course, none of this would be possible without, first and foremost, our partners with the city, and then of course the citizenry of Durham who supported us with the $95 million bond. So thanks everyone for your attendance. Mr. Snell, all yours, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you once again. A number of you I had an opportunity to be with this afternoon, as Mr. Scott indicated, as we were doing our tour. So I will try this evening not to repeat everything that you heard today, but to give you an overview of where we are, update with respect to DDMP process, talk about the CNI, and give you also a brief update on where we are with what we consider to be DDMP Phase 2. So first, we're going to talk about J.J. Henderson and the new construction site. Next slide, please. Well, this is just an overview, and most of you have seen this slide before. This is the cover. This overview here illustrates all of the projects that we have undertaken in the DDMP. Most of these sites are controlled by DHA. There are 2 sites that we are in partnership with the county and the city. Those sites that we are in partnership with the city include the South Side and then Hunt Street, which are the city's projects, but they are included in our presentation. And I say we're in partnership because they're all a part of the DDMP. And then as far as the county, you know that as part of the redevelopment of the DHA office site, it also includes the county criminal justice site. Next slide, please. So this is our latest and greatest, our wonderful work that we have done at J.J. Henderson. We refer to it as the J.J. Henderson Rehab. We have completed the rehabilitation of the 177 units there at the J.J. Henderson. This was about a $31.2 million investment. We had the grand reopening last Friday. Some of you may have been in attendance. It was well received. We had great participation. We were honored to have Mr. Henderson's son and grandson in attendance for this event. We had the mayor, we had visitors from HUD. Also, we had Congressman Price. Today, of course, you got a chance to see the work that has been done there at J.J. Henderson. Unfortunately, we didn't have the units staged today as they were on last Friday, but I think you got a good feel for the comfort and the new environments that have been created as a result of the work we were doing. The good news is, at this point, this 177 units are almost completely occupied at this point. Next slide. This is the Joyce. You got a chance to see the Joyce also today. We are at the 75% completion of this project. We hope to have you on site with us for the ribbon cutting, the grand opening of this project in late February, early March of 2023. Next, I want to spend some time talking a little about the CNI site, the Choice Neighborhood site. And this is 519 East Main Street and Liberty. We had a chance to visit this site today as well on the tour. If you take a look at there on the upper right-hand corner as number 1, that is actually the Liberty Street there in the corner of Liberty and Elizabeth. This is the first of our developments to take place, and this is where the Elizabeth Street Apartments. We officially can say that we are under construction at that site now. We have started the demolition. The asbestos removal is underway, and we are hoping to have you with us on the 15th of this month, where we will have, I guess we would call it a groundbreaking to announce the demolition of the site. We are moving forward with that, anticipating that we will have the financial closing of this transaction sometime around mid-January. and hopefully we can start construction as early as February of 2023 for the first phase of 519 and Liberty, which is Elizabeth Street. Number 2 and 3 on the site, which is on the site plan, which represent the first phase of CNI. This is the Commerce Street apartments. The 2 phases that are represented here, we will have a family phase here, and we will have a seniors phase. Numbers 4 and 5 are, for number 4 is Dillard Street. And then number 5 is the Main Street, which is the final phase of this site. Next slide, please. This is just again, this is an illustration of that site, Elizabeth Street Apartments. As I indicated, we had projected to close this transaction. We were hoping we can get there in the 4th quarter. There's still maybe a slight chance that we can get there, all depending on what HUD will do with respect to scheduling us for the closing. But given the holiday schedule, I think we were going to more than likely push into January before we get this transaction closed. And then for the Commerce Street, we are looking at closing that transaction during the first part of the 1st quarter of 2023. Just a little bit about the Choice neighborhood. As you all know, last month, I would say end of September, we received announcement of being a recipient of a $40 million Choice neighborhood implementation grant from HUD. This was a competitive process. We were very pleased with the outcome. We got a lot of support from all of our partners, especially the city, when we undertook this endeavor. And as a result of that, we will be bringing this $40 million to help us with the 519 East Main and Liberty site. As you can see from the slide here, our lead participants, and we are the lead participant, but our co-applicant was the city of Durham. Our neighborhood implementation entity is Downtown Durham, Inc., Laurel Street Residential. They're a housing implementation entity, and Durham Children's Initiative is our people's implementation entity. We are well on our way with respect to getting this process started with our whole implementation process. We talked about the schedule for the physical development on the site. We also had representatives from DCI to join us last week for a residents meeting there at 519 East Main and Liberty, where we were talking to our residents that are being involved in our first relocation for the Commerce Street. So because they will be providing that support to each of the households through their case management process, we brought them in early to introduce them and also for them to start getting knowledge of some of the support services that we will be providing the individuals and that they need as part of the relocation process for that initial phase. As far as how the $40 million will be allocated, the housing strategy will take approximately 22.6 million of that. Well, for the neighborhood improvements, which are actually the critical community investment, 6 million. Some of those Mr. Scott talked to you about today when we went over to the Hayti Historical Center. We talked about the monies that will be applied for the restoration of that structure and the other improvements that will be taking place as part of this investment. The people strategy, there's $6 million being allocated to that, and the remainder of the funds will be used for the administrative fees covering those type of costs.
Hey, Anthony, let me just chime in a little bit about the neighborhood piece, because
Sure.
in addition to, there's 500,000 that's going to the restoration of the Hayti Heritage Center, another 250,000 that'll be a part of the Hayti Heritage Center's efforts to connect Hayti to downtown, so kind of a pathway there. And then there's $4 million that's going towards loans for small businesses in partnership with the Office of Workforce and Economic Development, and another $1 million going towards environmental remediation for businesses in that targeted area, particularly the Fayetteville Street corridor.
Thank you. Next slide, please. I covered this partially when I was talking about the site plan for 519 East Main. This is just laying out the phases. The green here represents Elizabeth Street. Elizabeth Street is considered our non-CNI phase because that had been approved as part of the rental assistance demonstration program, and we had received that approval, so we couldn't include it in the CNI application. So but the other three phases here, that one that's lavender, that is the commerce phase. The burnt orange, I would say, or rust, that is Dillard Street. And then the blue phase there, that is the main street. So those are the 4 phases that are at 519 East Main and Liberty, and the 3 phases that are considered to be our choice neighborhood phases. As far as the DDMP phase 2, we talked about that also today. That includes Fayette Place, Forest Hill Heights, and the DHA office and County Criminal Justice Center. The 2 priorities for us right now are Fayette Place and Forest Hill Heights. We are in the process of negotiating the master development agreement with our development partners. And the master development agreement pretty much establishes the terms of the business terms of our transactions, as well as it established the roles and responsibilities of all of the parties, that being DHA and the developers. So what we have, we are moving forward with that. These developments, the master development agreements, I'm trying not to say MDAs, not to use acronyms here. We are negotiating those terms right now, and we are hoping to have that complete by February. By December of this year. Okay. And then share some information about the phases here. This is the Fayette Place. And what we have, this is the work that has resulted from over the last couple of months when we were going through the process of having community engagement. As part of the process, when the developers submitted their proposals, they had an initial concept or vision of what they, in response to our requirements as part of the RFP, the request for proposal process, they came back with their initial vision. Of course, during the time frame of us going through the community engagement process and receiving input from the community, the stakeholders, we have tried to refine those plans. What you have here before you right now are 2 of the options that we are looking at with respect to the site phase. And the primary difference between these 2 sites are related to home ownership, the number of home ownership opportunities that we are going to create on the site. If you look to your left there and option A, you will see there's a phase 1A, and then at the top, and then there's also a phase 1A down at Grant Street. Both of these where we are proposing to put townhomes. And then if you look at option B, you will see where we have replaced that phase 1 where we had townhomes with additional multifamily. But overall, the plans, they meet the requirements that have been established as part of the RFP process, where we establish a base number of units on the site. and the plans still address that. These are mixed income, mixed use developments that we are proposing for the sites. Here is just an illustration of what the site could look like. This is not what we will end up with. This is we created this to give the community an opportunity to have more visuals to kind of see what we are trying to develop here as part of the process. And if you can see here in the picture to the left there, you see 147 in the background. You see the different elevations. You see the green spot of the green space that has been created. And one of the things that came up as part of our discussions with the community, that they did not want this neighborhood to seem like a fortress, right? They wanted the neighborhood, they wanted the community, the new development to blend in with the neighborhood. So if you can see from the illustrations there, you can see where there's entrances on both sides. Is the interest facing the street, the existing community, and there's interest within the courtyards, as you can see how the development is laid out. The slide down to your lower right, this is the entrance into the community. If Juliet, that building that's directly in the center in the back, that's a depiction of the community center that will be built into the development. And so this is looking into the main interest into the site. Again, the one top right is just to give you an idea of what the streetscape of how that it looks from a street view. To the right there, that is actually the school that's located over there. So trying to recreate that and to assimilate the visual for the community.
Hey, Anthony, let me just add that top left slide where you see the freeway there, it's not actually that high, right? That's not to scale. The freeway is actually above, it's above the site. So I don't want anyone to get confused about the depictions here as being accurate in terms of scale and things like that. But the freeway actually hovers above the site, not the way it's represented here.
Correct. Next slide, please. This is the redevelopment of Forest Hill Heights. This is what the proposed visual is and what the proposed final look is for Forest Hill Heights. Still, again, these designs are what have been developed conceptually. We are still going through the process of finalizing these designs as part of our process. But what's important here is if you take a look at the picture there on the bottom right-hand side, this is more or less the center of the proposed center of the property, where we are creating this community square or center there within the property for gatherings, for different activities there on the site. If you can visualize the change in the elevations and taking a look at what is being proposed here, and if you could look at the art, well, you may not be able to distinguish it, but that if you see the little steps as it change in the different grades, that actually represent the proposed art that will be done on the site in honor of the Haiti community. So part of developing this site is to give is to recognize the contributions of the Haiti community as part of this, and they have proposed and given the site the name of Tribute Rising.
And the kind of square you see here is between Block A and Block C.
Yeah. And to the left here, if you'll go back, Julie. Okay. To the left here is the proposed development in the various blocks, which Mr. Scott had mentioned. I will point out that block B2 is going to be a seniors building. This is, you know, as we talked a little bit about today, this is a mixed income, mixed use development. In our meetings with our residents, they were very clear that they wanted a seniors only building on the site. So in recognition of that, we are proposing that block B2 will actually be the seniors building, which it's practically in the center of the site. And that provides replacement for the current 55 units that are on the site. Next slide, please. That is okay. That is the end. Any questions?
Oh, I see Lucia has a question. Lucia, go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Snell. Could you talk a little bit about what Choice Neighborhood Initiative means? I'm not familiar with that program.
Choice Neighborhood Initiative is a HUD representative program. It actually replaced what was known as the Hope 6 program. It is a major development program that was initiated by HUD as an opportunity for housing authorities to undertake massive redevelopment or repositioning of their housing stock. And it's a competitive process. It is in its 11th year of operation. I think it was initially visualized under, I knew the secretary's name, I was going to think Kemp, when he was Secretary of Housing. It was visualized under his administration, and it finally came to fruition. But it is a competitive process which it's on an annual basis. Generally, there's about 4 or 5 grantees selected on an annual basis. It used to be until this year, we were awarded 40 million. In the prior years, I think the may have been the top grant was somewhere close to about 30 million, if I'm correct, Anthony. But it is one of HUD's new major initiatives whereby they, through this process, you compete for this funding, and it's granted to the awardees. And part of it is a very comprehensive program where it's not just focused on the physical aspects of a neighborhood or a targeted area, but it also includes, we mentioned, the people piece, ensuring that there are support services for impacted individuals that are part of this targeted community. And there's broader opportunity to invest in the community, where we talked about some of the community investments. I'll let Mr. Scott add more to it if he would like to.
No, I think you covered it well. It's got the 3 components, the physical piece, the piece that focuses on people. They call it the people component, where you work with the families on that site for 6 years or more. And then there's the neighborhood component, which serves a larger area. That's why there's a connection to the Hayti Heritage Center. There's a connection to the trail. There's a connection to the business loan piece of that. So it allows you to do more than just focus on one particular site, but as the name implies, it's more of a neighborhood approach.
And so the properties that are redeveloped under that residents would be offered vouchers? Is that how they remain affordable?
Well, it depends on the structure of the deal. In our case, and I'll let Anthony explain, in our case, it does include the use of vouchers because we do have some RAD components in it, but we have potentially some non-RAD components in it. But affordability is at the heart of all of this, right? Anytime you're dealing with HUD, there's always going to be affordability built in and protections built in. So some of the key protections with RAD is that any resident who is a resident of the site you're selecting doesn't have to requalify. Their rents don't change. They're still based on 30% of their income. They have a first right of return to that site of any units that get built there. So there are lots of protections that were built in. I like to talk about it in terms of this iteration. Anthony talked about it being a iteration from the Hope 6 program. They learned a lot of lessons from the Hope 6 program, so they made sure they don't repeat them. And the other key component with RAD is one-for-one replacement. Whatever units you tear down, you have to replace those units. And those units are remaining affordable through perpetuity.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. John had a question. John, we just have a couple of minutes, so.
Oh, well, I was just wondering about, the change in the Fed rates, the financing going up, how that may affect some of the future projects and plans of the future phases.
Yeah, it's an issue. Just like it was when the pandemic hit and construction costs spiraled out of control. It means real tough decisions around how we move forward with various phases and things like that. So we made adjustments to get these projects back on track and included an additional $6 million investment in the first phase, the Elizabeth Street apartments. The Choice Neighborhoods grant has helped because that's another $22+ million that's going in. It would have been nice that we could have maybe targeted that to deeper affordability, but it just became a gap filler for the most part, right? Because of all of the issues that are happening with the construction cost. And now we have interest rates spiraling. So all of it's going to mean, just as always, every phase is going to have to be figured out phase at a time.
Thank you so much. At this point, in the interest of time, I'll go ahead and turn it over to community development. If we have time later, we can do more questions. Thank you both again.
Thank you so much, Reginald Johnson, Director of the Department of Community Development. I'm just going to have a short mention of a few points, definitely because we have two of our key partners that will be here sharing some additional information. We want to provide ample opportunity for them. But a couple of points that I want to make as updates. One, our CAPER has been submitted. That's the Consolidated Evaluation Report, basically the HUD report card. It was been on public display last month. And so that has been submitted to HUD, and we're pleased about that. And you'll be able to see what we've done with the federal entitlements for the past year, which is part of Forever Home Durham. And so you'll be able to see that and what has been reported to HUD. Juliet did send out at least I think she sent out a link to the presentation that I did on income and affordability for the city council as part of the mayor's deep dive. This was at the work session a couple of weeks ago. And so I hope you would take an opportunity to get a chance to look at that. It was a focused on some things that we've talked about here, but it was a focused sharing on income and the AMI and why, particularly as it relates to the federal funds, but also on why we focus on the household income and sizes that we do. And so I would encourage everyone to take a look at that that presentation at your earliest convenience. And the next thing that I would share, we're thinking that in terms of the projects that we have that are underway, we may have gotten through some of the increases. We gave additional money to several projects to keep them forward. We'll see what the future holds, but we think that they have enough funding to be able to proceed without any, like I say, without any additional requests for funding. And then the next thing, and then we will talk about this at the next meeting, we have reviewed the next iteration of the financial progress on Forever Home Durham with the city manager. We did that last month. And so this will, if you remember the one that we went through in detail before, was ending in February of this year. But we have one that is the latest will be the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, and that will be basically halfway through the bond period and the Forever Home Durham plan. And so we'll be able to give a more detailed update starting at the next meeting. With that, I'll stop and answer any questions, or else we can move to the next segments of the agenda.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Johnson?
I do. So, Mr. Johnson, we did not send that link out to this group because you had not explained it to them.
Okay. All right. Well, we can send it out now. I've explained.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So just to reiterate, the mayor, as part of the deep dive for the city council, has requested that different parts of the city that touch affordable housing share information, and our time was up to share. And the focus point is that they narrow the scope of, so it's not an all-encompassing discussion, but focus on narrow points each work session. And she was going to be having the council to do that for the next several work sessions. And they've already done it for about four of the work sessions, I think, since the beginning of the fall. And so they will ask us, she asked us to present on income and affordability to give them some foundations on that. I thought it was excellent discussion afterwards. And that's probably the most important thing that I would encourage people to listen to after the presentation. So, and Juliet will send that out to you. Thank you, Juliet.
Thank you again. Any questions? Okay, seeing no hands. At this point, I will turn it over to Moss and Ross. I believe, Jenny, you're gonna take us forward.
Actually, all three of us here.
Okay.
And so I'm Susan Ross, the founding partner of Moss and Ross. I have one of my colleagues from Moss and Ross here, Jean Murray, who handles our communications, and she and I have been working on this from the start. And Jenny Paluski from French West Vaughan, which has been our agency partner from the start on this as well. So the three of us will all be presenting to you tonight. And Juliet, do you have the slides to come up?
I do. I zoned out for a minute. Hold on. I forgot.
It's a long day.
Yeah, I forgot where I was.
Well, it was a good segue into our talk, though, to talk about the communications with the city council, because they've been very intentional. We have all been intentional about being in good communications from the start of this. So that's what we're talking about how we are communicating this good news. So you can go to the next one for me. In the April 22 report to City Council, the CDD clarified the funding sources that were applied to the goals of the 2019 bond program. And as a result, some affordable housing accomplishments are not considered part of the bond program because the funding had been allocated prior to the bond passage. One example is Willard Street, which we're all proud of and excited about, but it was already approved before the bond passed. So we want to be very clear and careful in how we explain what we're spending out of bond money and what we're spending in other ways. But Willard Street is an important milestone in Durham's continuum of actions and partnerships to address affordable housing. And we want to celebrate it, and we want to show it to the world. A third funding source during this time has been federal COVID-19 response funds, which the city has distributed for rent relief, expanded emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, and other critical needs. We know these funds are not sustained, they are ending. But if you're talking about what it means to be Forever Home Durham, we feel like all three of these are part of the story. So you can hit the next slide there. So from a communications point of view, the words Forever Home Durham, in our minds, were never used as part of the bond. They're part of what is Durham doing to create this, to realize the community's vision for an affordable, livable, inclusive Durham. So we are using these two terms set differently. The Forever Home Durham, broaden that usage, and then be very specific about the bond money and how that is accounted for. So refining the messages about the bond program accountability. It was such a significant milestone in Durham's history. And every time we celebrate something, like I heard David Price talking about it this week, we all remember the bond as a significant milestone. The city remains committed to account for the goals and spending for this program. So the Forever Home Durham website tracks accountability specifically for the $160 million investments committed for the goals in the period of 2019 to 2024, even as we're trying to use every penny we can get to make Durham a Forever Home Durham. So Jean is going to speak a little more about the website itself.
Right. So on the next slide, please, Juliet. So the website is very specific about the progress for the $160 million investment program. And this is updated regularly with the outcomes against the goals for the program. So we want to make that clear that the accountability is still very much a part of what the Forever Home Durham website is. The next slide, please, Juliet. But an important, equally important message of Forever Home Durham is that the city's actions to address affordable housing include many partners. So it's the actions through partnerships that really create the broad impact that the Forever Home Durham program is about. So the website itself features these partners with summaries and links, and also through storytelling. So Jenny, we'll go to you next.
You can go to the next slide, Juliet. So, right, as Jean said, storytelling, it's an important part and way for our community to stay informed about what the city's doing with affordable housing. And we're doing a lot of that on the city site now. It is embedded within the city of Durham's website. But if you were to go to foreverhomedurham.com, you would land there. And the timeline on the home page, once you're there, and we realize as you're looking at the slides here on the screen, you can't actually click that link, but that's why I call out the foreverhomedurham.com. That would take you right there. But the timeline on the home page summarizes the milestones. And the website includes other resources for the community, including FAQs, definitions and terms. So there's a lot, there's really kind of rich material there. But these impact stories are some of which you do see here, and I know the type is small, but they're ways to inform the community not only about the progress, but also the changing reality. So, for example, market conditions have changed considerably. We just spoke about that a minute ago, John, after you had your question. And, that of course, that's changed a lot since 2019 when the bond was passed. And so the website is a source for this context as well. And the next slide shows opportunities and plans for partner storytelling. And we do, so Juliet, if you go on to that next slide, we do welcome input into this list from this group here and ongoing, whether that's in these meetings or in the future. We welcome what this looks like, but this gives you a nice overview of what stories that we've highlighted over the past year and a half, almost 2 years, what we have planned now, really the second section here, 2022 story opportunities. Some of these we're certainly right in the middle of, and there's a lot of action taking place, especially even, this month and in these few weeks that we're currently in right now, which has really been wonderful from a storytelling and milestone and progress standpoint. And in addition to the storytelling on the website, our communications planning includes other media opportunities such as appearances on City Life. And so if you go I don't mean to go too quickly through this, and I actually am not sure. I assume this group will receive this this presentation to spend some time with, or certainly we welcome questions. But if you do go to that next slide, one of the things we are really evaluating and considering at this point are additional ways to further the awareness. This gives an overview of what has been going on in terms of outlets for communication to date, which includes what we say really owned, earned, and shared. Think about it in terms of those terms. And what that means is, owned, these are the things that we have control over and the avenues for communication that we quote unquote own. So the city website, the newsletters, Will City Today, et cetera, where we can take advantage and leverage means for reaching the community. We've been doing that all along. Earned, so local media coverage, and we have been working to invite attention and interviews and attendance at events from the local media to cover announcements, progress, general information, and working hard to make sure that they have the full context of the bigger picture of Forever Home Durham, like we talked about, and how all of the funds work together to make these things happen, and certainly how that what challenges we're faced with. And shared, so things like social media, partner relations, using communications with the key partners. Oh, excuse me, am I doing that? No, it's Juliet. I don't have control, do I? But I was hitting my mouse, so for a minute I thought I did. So partner relations and working to extend the reach through the partners, committee and council meetings, what we're doing here tonight with the committee, and on location at development sites. You may have seen some signs. I think there's one at JJ Henderson. We're looking to get more out, especially as there is actual boots in the dirt work happening with new builds and demolitions, and making sure that those physical signs show up. But another opportunity to further amplification that we're considering now is paid campaigns. So what you see here in visual on that bus, it's a mock. It's not actually out there yet, but we're considering the value and return of getting some additional awareness through transit, television ads, and targeted digital display ads. So things that, we can drive home the messaging that we've reviewed in this presentation, drive people to the website to hear more, and make sure that we're reaching as many audiences as possible to share, information as we go. And with that, Juliet, you can go to the next slide, and that completes our presentation for the evening.
Are there questions people would like to ask? John?
I'm wondering what kind of metrics you can share with us about folks going to the website, and how that's, what's that like. Also, I know we had a discussion when we first got going about there's a lot of information on it about the projects and partners and that type of thing, but we had talked some about having highlighting some of the residents that are being affected, that some of the case studies of that, to try to drive the narrative about, because we're going to end up wanting and needing and asking for more money. We need to drive the narrative about how it's affecting people's lives. So if you could just discuss that a little bit, that'd be helpful.
Sure. And I apologize, I don't have the metrics right on my fingertips for website traffic specifically, but it's a great question and something we'd want to make sure that we continue to keep this committee updated on, not only on the baseline of what those numbers look like now, but especially as we move towards paid, campaign work and what that return looks like in terms of increased traffic. So that we'll take note of to make sure it comes back to you, John. Good question. As far as residents, yes, on the storytelling, you'll see that we've had a couple of opportunities to highlight and feature residents in our sort of owned, going back to the owned, shared, and earned piece that was on that I referenced on the slide, but where we have the opportunity opportunity to feature and storytell on our own. We're working hard to do that oftentimes, and welcome any help in doing that. Oftentimes it's been difficult to find residents who are willing to speak, but we want that, and we're working hard to identify and those opportunities. We also, an example of where this also happened and is highlighted and earned in the earned capacity with media attending and covering the stories. And Anthony Snell and Anthony Scott will, and Reginald, Karen, you were all there, you all know this, but as we were just celebrating the reopening of JJ Henderson, we had a current resident there able to speak about, her longtime experience in the past and in the present as that milestone was reached. So yes, John, we welcome it, want more of it, and hope we can continue to identify folks who are willing and eager to share their story and agree it's a very important component.
Well, maybe you could put I'm sure you got that person on video at the opening. Maybe put that up on the website. I'm also a little curious to know. I know that I don't know if DHA does surveys from time to time of the residents, but if there's a way to kind of many residents have been affected by an upgrade and a change in their living conditions. Is there anything, any surveys that are being done or may be done that can include some of what the work is that's going on?
None that's been done in this respect. We've done surveys in the beginning to kind of determine what people's needs are, but we haven't done anything in terms of what you described. So I think that's a great idea to kind of look at doing something like that.
If some type of survey is done and it's done face to face or knocking on doors, sometimes, grabbing your phone and just getting a little testimonial, we call it a little pop-up testimonials, a couple sentences or a couple fill in the blank. My life now is blank, or forever home Durham means to me blank. And just have that kind of up on the website. I think it's just real important, not just to keep folks informed of the metrics of the progress, but also bringing it home for how it's improving and affecting people's lives. So kind of interesting, we're talking about the Hayti development work. So all the way back in 1975, I worked to help paint it way back then to bring it in. So it's really great to see it all going. I know there's been a lot of controversy about some of the Fayetteville place and stuff, but I think you're doing a great job. It's a great presentation. I just keep it going.
Right. So you're saying you're available to help with the surveying. I made note of that. So thanks.
I thought he was helping with the painting.
Help.
You're helping with the painting, aren't you, John?
Yeah, I can help paint too.
We have a long list for you, John.
Yeah.
Those are great comments. Great ideas.
It's very professional. It's very good. Let's keep it going.
Thank you all. Are there any other questions for the Moss and Ross team? Just wanted to let you know that the DHA did a wonderful bus tour today, and WRAL covered it. I didn't catch the whole thing, but I caught part of it and it looked good. So, all right. All right. Hearing none. John, your hand is still up. But at this point, then we'll move to UMCNC for an update on the MWBE progress. Thank you all so much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Renee Jones, and I'm with UMCNC. My colleague Brenda Pollard is here with me. So we'll just go into quickly our update. Miss Juliet, if you could go to the next slide. So here are some of the activities that have been going on since we last reported to you. One of the things that we're doing is what we call additional phone interaction. So we are calling all of the certified hubs firms in the Durham and Orange County area. We are introducing the Forever Home program to them so that as they get information from different general contractors, it won't be unnoticed. They will have some interest in it. And so we're recording all of those interactions. And if we get any feedback from them, we're making sure to make note of that and to make adjustments and to how they're being communicated with. The other thing that we're doing is trying to make sure that we find new allies and partners, especially on the workforce side. So we're going to work with a longtime partner of El Centro because they actually did a program where they have some candidates they went through the HVAC program at Durham Tech, and they need some assistance in finding employment for them. And so we're going to use that opportunity if our mechanical and plumbing firms in the Forever Home program have some openings, that we also include them as possible candidates. We're also looking to see if any of those graduates are currently any residents of the properties that are in question. And so that would be a win-win for us. And that will hopefully give us some of those stories that Jenny is looking for also. Durham Med Week just happened, and statewide Med Week, for those of you who are not familiar with the Med Week term, it is Minority Economic Development Week. And so it's a special week set aside for training and programming and opportunity fairs for minority and women-owned businesses across the state. And Durham is typically the first week in October. And this week, this year, the events were led by the Greater Durham Black Business Chamber. They put up all the events, and so the team attended each one of the events to make sure that we were there to promote whatever opportunities were available, but just to also, as Jenny mentioned, put out the word about the program and the opportunities that are coming up. We also were able to gain a new ally, trying to assist some of our Black business developers so that they could be interested in some upcoming programming here. And so we connected them with some of the larger developers in the area through the ULI Triangle Real Estate event that happened yesterday. And so 10 of our developers were able to attend that event as ULI guests. That was a new ally, and hopefully we're going to continue to have what we call coffee and conversations so that they can begin to partner with some of the larger developer firms, which hopefully will have interest in the Forever Home program as opportunities arise. And then we've been able to assist several of the firms that are working in the program that weren't HUB certified to get their HUB certification. So we've got 5 that have received their HUB certification so far. 2 are pending, and we're working with 8 others on preparing their documentation for submittal. So as you can see, we actually do have several firms in the area that were not even aware of the benefits of being recognized as a minority or woman-owned business in North Carolina. And so we're being able to educate them on that. So next slide, please, Ms. Juliet. So I'm very proud to say one of our contractors, Pinham Construction, was recognized at HCAC, which is the Hispanic Contractors Association, and they won General Contractor of the Year. And so we're also trying to do things to prepare Angie for the next opportunity to come up, and hopefully she will be also working with one of the upcoming developers and be a general contractor on one of these projects coming up. And so we're very, very happy about that. And we did have several representatives from the city council at that award event. So here just gives you a snapshot of where the spend is and what has been paid to date. It's a little bit over what you may have seen on the website because not all things translate as quickly as we would like them to, but here you have about 10 million, 10.7 million that has been committed. Committed means that these are contracts. These are contracts that have been signed, but they may or may not have started the work yet. So that's why there's a big difference in the committed and what actually has been paid to date. You will find that a lot of the minority owned firms especially do the work at the tail end of the jobs, which is the finishes work. And so that's why you'll see a lot more of the paid to date and the committed looking more equalized as the jobs progress. What we have upcoming, of course, is the North Carolina Coordinators Network Conference. This is a statewide conference of diversity advocates like myself. We're going to be holding that conference, and Wednesday is dedicated to MBE engagement, meaning we are looking to engage with especially contractors. It's going to be, and that's totally dedicated to Wednesday, is learning new contractors across the state. And so we've invited several of them to come and talk to us and learn more about us, and we can learn more about them. That is a great place for me to be talking about the Forever Home program also. Our upcoming project, Bryan Place, actually is going to have an outreach on November the 15th. It is a virtual event. If you all would like copies of the announcement, I can make sure that Miss Juliet gets those to you. And then we do have the Black Business Gala that we will be also attending, because we know that there'll be several businesses there that can engage with the program on different levels because they are members of the Black Chamber. So those are the things that we have upcoming. And that is it. Any questions?
Thanks so much, Renee. Any questions? Oh.
I do have a question. Renee, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. I see you had it divided between African-American, Black, Hispanic, and women. Do you disaggregate that a little bit further to see how many minority women are securing these contracts as well?
So the reason why it is broken up like that is because that's the rules of certification here in North Carolina. That is something we can look into if this committee is interested in that. But here in North Carolina, your certification is either if you are a Black woman, you are considered minority. So your race trumps your gender. So all of them are considered in the Black category, in the minority category. But if you are interested in knowing how many of them are Black women, we can do a little work and find that out for you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Right. Next on our agenda is public comments, but I want to go back to the committee to see if anyone has any comments for any of the presenters or general comments before we go to public comment. We're doing well on time. Okay. I'm seeing none, so thank you all. Juliet, can you let, I think I only saw two.
That is correct. Hold on, please.
Members of the public. And I don't know how long that takes. I know Raquel Williams-Jones had some questions earlier, and Raquel, we will give you, whenever you're ready, 2 minutes to share your questions or any other comments you have.
Okay, so the comments I put in there, I don't see the questions, I don't see anymore. No, I think because now you put me as a panelist, all my questions disappear because now I'm in a different.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I have a copy of them if you'd like me to read them out for you.
Okay.
Okay, so your first question, and this was, I believe, directed to the Housing Authority, which is, what is the agency doing about allowing residents to access equity in the redevelopment deal for any of the communities that will be demoed or I believe
Dispo.
Okay, and then residents have a first right to purchase. Anthony, would either of you like to comment, or did you want to clarify that further? Raquel?
Yes, I do. So, we're a public housing tenants association, and we see the CNIs and the RAD. RAD is a privatization model, and the big boys come in, they develop like they do. That's what they do. But residents are promised choice neighborhoods. They get vouchers that they can't really actualize in the local communities. And they just leave without having any kind of equity ownership. And I feel like most of these residents who've endured such horrible living conditions from the disinvestment over the years should be allowed to also share in the equity as a partner in the redevelopment deal. And residents have resident councils or organizations. If residents come together, they have the first rights to purchase in the cases of demo dispo. Are any of the communities going through a demo dispo? If so, has those rights been afforded to residents? Has an implementation execution plan been afforded? If no, and RAD is coming in and that ownership structure is changing, are we considering equity and inclusion in those ways?
Well, we don't have any straight dispo of our properties. We are still part owners. We DHA are still part owners in all of these deals. So it's not a straight sale to a developer and they have it and they go and do whatever. That's not how it works with how we are approaching this. So it's not typical for any of the deals that we're doing that we're looking to dispose of the properties outright. We're doing partnerships with developers. They're bringing in, their experience of doing the development. They're bringing in their capital. They're taking on the construction risk, those sorts of things. So these are legitimate partnerships. The Housing Authority has a first right of refusal at any point in the future. Typically it's 15 years if you're doing tax credits, that those partnerships are going to end. The Housing Authority will be taking those properties back, and that's very much a part of how we planned each and every one of these deals. Not very different than the Hope 6 deals that we had. So we're actually in process now of bringing those Hope 6 deals back under full ownership of the Housing Authority. So that's how we're approaching all of those deals. With respect to opportunities for equity, I mean, that essentially is saying that we need to bring some sort of investment into the deal, some sort of capital into the deal in terms of true equity. As was expressed here, the question is, how are we managing the spiraling costs, both in terms of construction, and now we're dealing with the double dose of, now you also got to deal with the increase in interest rates. Because of these deals are tax credit deals, there isn't really an opportunity for equity in the true sense, equity investment in the true sense, because the tax credit deal structures them as a credit to the investors. The investors are putting their capital in, and what they get back is a tax credit. So there isn't really an interest in seeing revenue being generated, if you will. The revenue that is generated goes to the Housing Authority and that developer as a equity share, but that's pretty much it.
Well, I understand that.
There are two things. I'm sorry, let me just finish. I was just thinking about this. There are two things that I will say. One, so for the Fayette Place site, we are providing home ownership opportunities, but we also have a commercial retail component there. And so we're looking at that, trying to figure out how that might be an opportunity for equity for the community. I've had a very highly preliminary conversation around looking at a structure that might allow that to happen, but we haven't gotten far enough along where I can talk about that publicly yet. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, thank you for that. I mean, I was putting all kind of questions in the chat, but I do believe when you say, real equity in the sense of it is human capital, can be leveraged. Absolutely. And I just think that in these deals, millions and millions of dollars across the United States are just going into the hands of big business. And once again, minority communities are left out. So you could be creative if you want to. And it's just on how you perceive it to be. So, I mean, I know what's on paper. I know what's written in practice in theory, or in real life, but in theory, where tenants' opportunities to purchase are, that's a thing. And it's just not that difficult. If you wanted it, I believe we could make something happen. But I just am, so I guess it goes to one of the other questions in there. When it comes to the big businesses, what are we doing? If equity and inclusion is the mantra we're going to say, then by now we should have a pipeline, resident-owned businesses, training resident-owned businesses so that they can have a real stake into the plans of these developers, and not just those that cater to big construction, because this is a predominantly female African-American population who's not going to get out there necessarily, pounding on floors or, excavating and demolishing property. So let's be creative and let's figure out what kind of opportunities should we be affording resident-owned businesses. Is it excavation? Is it hauling? What kind of trucking companies? Relocation? There should be a very deliberate activity right now set in place where resident-owned businesses are given the capacity to perform. And what we find is they get the C&I grant in the name of resident councils being these stakeholders, but resident councils don't even have the capacity more than often to even have intelligent conversations at the table to even follow these plans through. So everybody get to play their stuff, they play their positions, and residents still get short end of the stick. So Section 3, of course, is the beginning of that, but that starts way before the development deal comes. What are some real tangible implementation strategies, just like you have the United Minority Contractors do a presentation, where are resident-owned businesses getting a stake at this, getting a part of this, piece of this pie?
Mm-hmm. Well, we have tried to recruit resident-owned businesses. We don't have the capacity to train up, if you will, resident businesses. We tried to look at that. We've done some work with Durham Tech. We focus more on making sure that we have employment opportunities via Section 3, and also what UMC and NC is involved with is making sure that we can reach as many minority-owned businesses as possible. Our development partners have specific minority goals. We ask for 30%. The J.J. Henderson project that is pretty much complete now was able to get to 25. And I don't know if Anthony's still on or not, but one of the things
is that minority business goals or resident-owned business goals?
It is minority business goals, where, as I said, we have not seen a lot of resident-owned businesses that we've been able to find. So to the extent that we can, we've been advertising for those and talking to our resident councils. But to the extent that they exist, we try to make that very much a part of this. We just haven't had a lot of success seeing many resident-owned businesses that are a part of this. So one of the things that we're hoping with, with the work that UMCNC is doing is to help identify those folks and all of the things that they presented on in terms of getting them the qualifications and things of that nature is exactly why they were brought in as a partner with the city. We are looking to have a specific position. This was part of what the city and DHA's relationship has been, a specific position that will be out to recruit first and foremost Section 3 jobs, because that's where we're really trying to focus in most is Section 3 jobs. And then obviously Section 3 resident-owned businesses as well. But other, it's not just resident-owned, it's also just businesses that are within that geographic area too. And if you have ideas and models that you want to offer us, we'd be happy to certainly hear about that, because it has been a struggle, even just finding our Section 3 interested job seekers. It has been a struggle.
Yeah, I think I sent some information to you after a few calls back. I've been following this committee. I used to live in Raleigh and I was a hub certified MWB, the whole 9 yards, went through all the paperwork, hired all the consultants, did everything that I was supposed to do. And it never really amounted to anything but a lot of training, a lot of information, but I never was able to actualize the contracts. And I was in Raleigh, so I was not in Durham. It is two different cultures, but nonetheless, the disparities are real because of practices. And so I put a resource there, the resident owned business incubator, because I promise you, you have businesses. They're there. They are under the table, and their job is to let the housing authority know of how much money they're not going to report. And so they just don't understand the power of a small business and how they can actually utilize and leverage both their social service benefits and the power of a small business to actually get out of poverty. So a lot of it is messaging, framing, a lot of it is systems navigation, a lot of it is about on your staff and how they access that. So if you're open to a conversation, we could definitely have one. I know I've put some information in there. And I think I have one other question. Did I have, I think the last question may have gotten cut off.
If you just tell us what it is.
I don't even remember. It was about this. Oh, this is what it was. The voluntary compliance agreement. So North Carolina is under VCA because of the gross neglect of Section 3. And I would hope that under the leadership of Durham Housing and the mayor, that we could really, do some real work. Because across the state of North Carolina, Section 3 is zero. And so let this project not go without us having, a deliberate, not just an effort, but actual outcomes. Because I believe what everybody's doing, you guys are doing a great job for the great cause of the people, but there's just some, communication gaps. There's just some things that as the higher up you work, you just can't see on the ground. And you may not understand why they're not reporting income. Why are they not telling you? It's a reason, because as soon as they tell you, they're going to get cut off all of their benefits. So how do we set up for a predominantly minority female population? How do we set up programs that reduce the risk of economic failure, that reduce them from losing their benefits just for taking a small job or a temporary position? That's what I'm hoping that this committee can really look towards accomplishing, because somebody has to do something different.
Thank you, Raquel. We have Christopher has a hand up, but before you begin, there are two people. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Never mind. Oh. We had two people with your name. Go ahead, Christopher. You have 2 minutes.
Oh man, Raquel, I want to say first, thank you for putting your heart on the table with that plea, with that, all your words. I only got 2 minutes. I don't want to belabor that, but I really appreciated that. That was inspiring. That was good. My name's Topher. I run an ADU organization called Quorum Houses. And this question is for community development, because last meeting, there was talk of this $3.5 million in the fund that was potentially for ADU use and exploration of that. And I know at the time, I think it was a month ago, we were not able to mobilize those funds. They were understaffed, I think is what was going on then. I was in a meeting last week with the mayor and the coalition of realtors and the county commissioner as well. And the whole meeting was about that $3.5 million in ADUs and what use what role ADUs could play in upsetting or breaking some of these cycles of economic and racial injustice. And so my question is, what's happening with those funds and what is needed to mobilize those funds? And I think I've sent an email to you, Karen, and I'm not sure who else was on that email, but yeah, I just want to know kind of what's happening with that and how to mobilize. That's my question.
So I'm going to start and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Lotto to provide some additional information. But I would say, and since the last meeting, there's nothing that has changed since the last meeting. So we still understaffed, still have vacancies. but we still have a lot of work to do. The team that's working on that, they're prioritizing the matters that they're working on, but there's nothing to report other than what we shared the last time that I do know. But Karen, I'll let you ask you to share any more detail.
Yes, sir. So I would just clarify that the line that you're referring to is a line that was for leverage financing pilots. So which could include ADUs, which could include preservation projects, could include any other kind of leverage financing pilots. So it was not and never was intended to be $3.5 million for ADUs. Specifically, it was essentially there as a resource and a pot to explore what we call leverage financing pilots, which is a lot like the our first example, which is the Durham Affordable Housing Loan Fund, where the city put in funding and we leveraged that against on a 3-to-1 basis against funding from other investors as a way of providing more money than we can by ourselves provide. Reginald is correct, and I think as you're aware, we did an early assessment of ADU pilots across the country to see sort of what the lay of the land was in terms of what we can support as community development, which is ADUs that are specifically for affordable housing, which means income restricted, yada, 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 yada. Because of the strings that our money comes with. And one of the realizations of that pilot is that a lot of these programs they're fairly high touch, high engagement, high staffing, and relatively low production. And at the time, we had to take a step back and say, we don't have the high touch right now that we can provide for doing this work. We just don't have the bandwidth to really think through and roll out the kinds of ideas that we've been exploring or that our research suggested, which is really thinking about how we can help to create a financial product that might be like not to fully finance the ADU, but to be a slice of a financing of ADUs. The other thing that was very clear to us is that there's more work that needs to happen kind of beyond the scope of what we can do around how the larger industry looks at financing of ADUs. That really is kind of beyond the scope of what we could take on, but we also recognize that as an important area. So I would say it's not something that we've given up on, but it's just not something that we have the capacity right now to take on.
No, I totally understand. That makes sense. And ADUs are still relatively new, particularly on the East Coast. My fear is that that money will sit and not get used, and it'll sit for too long, or it'll sit and then like just be funneled somewhere else. When right now, I know for me, I have a wait list of about 130 people who I could immediately mobilize those funds. And those people are in agreement with using it for long-term affordable housing, like not just 5 years, they're willing to do 15, 20 years, indefinite. And so what would be needed, and I don't know if this is possible. I'm 32 years old. I don't know a lot of things, but what would be needed? What would I need to present that would be compelling enough to say, you know what, Topher, farmhouses, this is a beautiful way to allocate these funds. We see how you've done it so far. Go use these funds, and let's make 30 affordable units come to life in 6 months. If I were able to put that together, like maybe that's just absolutely impossible. And if you say it's impossible, fine, I'll shut up. But I just want to see, like, is there anything that I could present that would be compelling enough?
I think as a general rule, and I'll defer to Mr. Johnson to talk further, but as a general rule, we put our funding out through competitive RFPs. So we won't, say quorum housing, you're fabulous and we're going to give you money, however fabulous you are. And so I think the rate limiting factor is us taking the time to craft and say, what is it that we want to fund in the ADU space, and putting an RFP out. And until then, it's hard for you to then respond. And right now, our focus really is on, we've got some other things queued up before we get to this in terms of things that we need to work on. I'll defer to Mr. Johnson, though, if he wants to add anything to that.
No, I think that's accurate. And then just to be honest, candid and transparent, particularly if you go through that sheet and in the neighborhood stabilization area, there's some charges that we have, some areas that the city manager has charged us to move forward with as quickly as possible. Don't have the staff to do that either, but I've got to make it happen. And that's why I'm putting the energy in, not to mention the fact that HUD is breathing down our neck with some still COVID funds and that, have gone, but, we still have to deal with. And I'm just going to be honest and transparent about that. And, I have 10 vacancies and, I know, get to sound like the teacher from Charlie Brown. And, people don't hear that, but, as a manager and a leader, that's what I have, realities I have to deal with in production in this overwhelming challenge.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate y'all's patience with me and my questions. No, that's great. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you all for that discussion. Tiffany?
Oh, yeah, no, thank you, Topher, for that. I'm the end of what you just said previously reminded me of something I have somewhere in my office. I wish I could find it now. One of the marketing sheets that the city put out prior to the vote for the bond, and there was a line item that said ADU on there. I can get that to you guys, but I guess my concern now, given that it sounds like there's not ability to focus on this. What is the likelihood that those funds will be redirected to another effort as opposed to attention being put on the ADU concern? Because there are several groups within the city working on it, and some of them are pulling together. And I know for myself, in sort of drumming up interest and support of the bond before the vote, ADUs was one of the things that I mentioned quite a bit to folks because it was really growing in interest in this area because of affordability.
So I would say, as Karen had mentioned, we've not given up on it. We just are not in a position to do all the things at one time. And so we do have to prioritize, spending has reflected that, the programs have reflected that, and when we did put the plan out, we had no idea about this thing called COVID. And so, but we haven't given up. And we know that there are interests there. And so we keep that in mind as we move forward. But we need to develop a plan around that.
Okay, so there's not an immediate concern about those funds being redirected to something else?
I would say no, but we need to come up with a plan. We're halfway through the bond period and the Forever Home Durham. And so that's one of the areas that we need to do some more work on, as Karen was outlining.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from the committee or anyone on the call? At this point, I think we should do our last two pieces of business and then do wrap up, Tiffany, if that's okay. So Mr. Johnson, would you like to talk about the volunteer appreciation reception?
I'm going to ask Juliet to talk about that.
Mr. Johnson, I thought we agreed you would, because I'm not prepared.
Oh.
At any rate.
So you can give the details, the date and the time, and then I'll talk about it.
All right, great. So everyone should have received a couple of emails from me in reference to the 2022 Volunteer Appreciation Reception, which will be held at City Hall on December the 5th. Pictures will be taken. I sent you the time that the picture is going to be there. Mr. Johnson will reiterate, you do not arrive at the time of the picture because they could be moving a little bit faster. You only have 1 minute to gather the group together. And if you had ordered your free gift, you should have also received an email letting you know that your order's been placed. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
All right, thank you. And just to follow up with Juliet, one of the things, and I'll take the time right now, just to thank you all for your service, to thank you for your time, your commitment to this work, to the citizens of Durham, to the the community of Durham. And one of the things is that the city council feels likewise. And what they have decided to do was to take a day, evening, to honor all of those persons who serve, volunteer their time to serve on the city's boards, commissions, and committees. And clearly you all are one of those. And so they're going to honor those. And there's the gifts with Juliet was just talking about, as well as take pictures for posterity. So that we will, your service will be recorded in the annals of history for the city of Durham and the contribution to our work. And so what they're going to do is to have all of the boards, committees, and commissions to join together and take pictures at the appointed time. And is the appointed time, because you know that there are a lot of boards, committees, and commissions. There are probably like about 30 of them, and they're gonna run them through like cattle. And to say, you come in and take your picture, then the next one come in and take their picture, and the next one. So it's not a lot of dilly-dallying around. So what we're asking is for folks to come on in, take a part of the refreshments, pick up your gift, be there early for the picture, the appointed time for the Affordable Housing Implementation Committee, because sometimes they do run ahead. And we all come together and take the picture and be recorded in the annals of history. Does that make sense? Well, I look forward to seeing all of you.
What's the dates on that again? May I ask? I missed that.
No, that's what Juliet will share the dates.
Okay, I thank you.
December the 5th. The event starts at 5:30, I believe. Am I right?
I'm not sure. Perhaps we could send another email with the details, or if I have a minute, I can check my email and let you know.
I'll open my emails back right now.
Okay, I think the pictures were right around 6 or 6:15, something like that. Let's see. Tiffany, are you ready to talk about the 2023 meeting schedule?
Yes. And I just pulled up the volunteer appreciation. The group meeting for this committee is at 6:10. That evening, the photo, sorry. So next year, our meetings will be quarterly. Everyone received the tentative schedule, February 2nd, May 4th, August 3rd, and November 2nd. So we are going to have a discussion if you have any questions, otherwise move forward with a vote to approve this schedule for 2022. Do we have any questions regarding the schedule to start? And if not, do we have a motion to approve the schedule as presented?
I'll move it.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Rita. All in favor of moving forward with the schedule, say aye.
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 Any opposed? So moved. This is our schedule for 2023.
Great, thank you, Tiffany. Did you have any other comments regarding wrap up? I did have a request. Mr. Scott and Mr. Snell, if you are sharing your email for people to be able to communicate with you. I don't know if that's something you.
Sure, it's A Scott. I'll put it in the chat as well. It's A Scott at DHA-NC.org. And Mr. Snell is A Snell, although he's not slow.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right. All right, Tiffany, back to you.
Let me see, one quick item before wrap up. I know that the topic of subgroups has come up. I know that we seem to have some interest in it, but without leaders for those subgroups to sort of take it and run with it, we won't be able to move forward with it. So down the line, if anyone has a really strong interest in a topic and wants to take the lead in leading a group, let us know. Otherwise, we will table this topic and remove it from future agendas. And other than that, our upcoming meeting, our next meeting is on February second and want to thank everyone for presenting today and thank everyone for attending. That calls our meeting.
Good
Good night,
night.
everyone.
Thank you.